Hey guys, welcome back to Life, Lo Nuestro, and Everything Else, the space where we have real conversations about things that are happening in our lives, real moments that shape our identity of who we are and who we are becoming. I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I'm excited to share that um, Omar is not only a dear friend of mine, but he has a lot of knowledge when it comes to a lot of things that we as Latinos don't often think about. So I'm happy to share that we'll have some information to share with you guys today. So, Omar, bienvenido a la conversación. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, gracias a Dios. Gracias por la invitación.
No, de nada. De nada. I know it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, like I said, and I'm glad we have a space to do so. So before we dive into other things that make you who you are and what life shapes you, let's start by grounding ourselves and really talk about who you are. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and how we got to here today.
So I was born in Georgia. My family's from Jalisco, Mexico, and we've moved all over from the South to the Midwest to Mexico, back to the Midwest, back to Georgia, and now we've been in South Carolina since 2014 and ended up in Charleston with the intention to go to college and with the original goal of becoming a math teacher. And midway through that, I was approached by somebody who talked to me about financial literacy. And I realized, okay, if I'm supposed to be college educated and I don't know any of this, I have a bad feeling this is not common knowledge, even though it should be. So I decided to work part time in that. And by the time I was in my fifth year, I had already made this decision. I wanted to work as a financial coach / advisor, but I wanted to finish out the year to at least finish the 3 degrees I was studying for. But I ended up deciding 2-3 months away from graduating to drop my math and education degree and just finish with my music degree because I was in the middle of it, of student teaching and working 5 part-time jobs, and everyone telling me I'm not supposed to be working while student teaching. And I said, well, unless I want to get evicted, there's no other option I have. And
That's
since
right.
I knew, I was like, I'm not even going to end up being a teacher anyway. Why am I suffering through this? I might as well just drop it now since I've already made a decision as to what I want to do. And so been doing that ever since. That summer before my fifth year is when I met my current wife, my only wife I've ever had. And just 2 months ago, we had our first child together. She already had a daughter from a previous marriage, but this is our first child together and my first child. And he's a son. His name is Leo. And I'm super excited to finally be a father.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations again. I know we've talked about this off camera, but I'm excited about the journey with being a father. I know you've had experience as far as like as a stepfather, obviously, but when it comes to having someone of your own, it's a little different because you're a little more invested, right? So it's a little more accountability when it comes to the things you do in life because now you have someone who's going to look up to you, one, and two, who may be like you, and hopefully you set enough of a standard that they can follow in those footsteps, right? So that's kind of awesome. How does it feel to be
Oh,
a
yeah.
dad?
I love it. It's a mixed feeling. Obviously, majority is happy and excited.
Hmm.
Excuse me. But there's this like bittersweet feeling to it because 4 years ago, my father passed away. And yeah, I mean, he was in his late 40s, and it made no sense for that to happen at that age. But it was a car crash, and obviously, we never know where we're going to go. And so that hit me back then more than anything because my sister hadn't even turned 15 yet. And so we were all like, well, who's going to dance with her at her quinceañera? And then my wife and I literally had just gotten married legally a week before. And so my wife was really looking forward to have him as a father-in-law. And then now that we have our first son together, like I feel so much of my dad in me, that I want him to see and live. You know, it makes me sad that he can't be here physically to enjoy him and like spoil him because like just knowing how my father was, like he would have absolutely loved being a grandfather to his first grandson. He already had a granddaughter before he passed, which was great that at least he got to enjoy one grandchild. Because my brother beat me to it, but it's yeah. So I just want to be as much as I can for him, and I'm just so excited to be able to teach him and guide him and just be the best father I can be.
It's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's tough. I am blessed that I've got my parents still with me, although they're split for my entire life. I can say that I've got both parents, and I know for a fact that I can count on my mother. My mother, she's very close to me. We talk every day. My father, it's a whole different story, but it is what it is, right? So obviously, sharing about what you said to me, how would you describe the season of life you're in right now? Not on paper, but personally, obviously, you talked about you having your son Leo and the expectations and what you would want for him, obviously because of what you saw to your father. But off paper, what describes the season you are in life right now?
I feel like this is the season where things really get real. Like they were real before. Like, I mean, when I first got into college, it was very real to me because it was the first time I had moved out and I had to figure out everything on my own, pay for my own bills, pay for college by myself, and just figure it out. And then it became more real after I graduated because now I said, okay, so now I can't really depend on loans and scholarships. I really have to just do it all me. And now that I'm with my girlfriend, like now we're a partnership working towards a marriage. And now that he's born, like I feel like this momentum that we've been building over time, now we're finally starting to see the roots of it or the fruit of it. And now I'm doing everything I can to keep that momentum going. Cause I know that if any point I stop or I just assume everything's going to be okay and I just ride the wave that everything we had built, we'd have to restart all over from the ground up. And so like now it's just like, okay, it is go time. I have to balance my time of being a father, a husband, a business owner, and just balance it all as much as I can and just constantly keep going forward because if I drop the ball at some point, then it's going to be harder to bring it back to where it was and continue making that progress.
Yeah, no, I love that you share that because with a lot of people, specifically in the Latino community, we are not taught to have that dependency within ourselves, right? We typically depend on our father, our mother, cousins, aunts, whatever, right? Because we can always, as a family whole, we always expect our family to be there because that's just who we are, right? But for you, being able to, I think be able to be responsible enough at that early age in college to know that, hey, if I don't set myself up for success in the long term, whether it's on my own, whether it's my partnership, whatever it is, long term, it's not going to serve me well, right? So I'm glad you talked about those points. When you look back on those experiences in those chapters in your life, what's one experience or chapter that really shaped who you are today?
My gosh, that's a really good question. One specific experience that really, I feel like it wasn't even necessarily those moments of going to college and figuring stuff out for myself or graduating or getting married. It's just this one specific moment, and I can't remember exactly, but I know it was either before college or in the middle of college, just having a conversation with my dad and me finally coming to the realization of all of his efforts. I mean, all my life I've always heard how both my parents came to this country, only had an elementary school education and worked their butts off so we can have a better future, and how since we're born here, like we have more opportunities and we have to take advantage of it. But it was at some point, because when I was a kid and we moved around so much, I didn't realize why. I just knew we moved and you just did what your parents said. But then when my father explained to me, he knew he had the responsibility of no matter what happens, you have to keep on moving forward. And the reason we moved so much is because we would try to set up a Mexican restaurant. It wouldn't work out well. And then we would have to close shop, move, and retry it. And we had to keep on trying over and over and over again until we finally did it right. And when my father explained that to me, how, I mean, he went from being a trucker to working at a restaurant to owning one and restarting and doing it all over again. And I feel like it's almost the cheesy conversation that your parents will have of like, you know, algún momento te faltó algo. Like, did you ever need anything from me? Like, te faltó comida, te faltó una
Mhm.
casa donde vivir, like anything like that. I'm like, no, we had everything. I'm like, yeah, because I took care of that. I made it my responsibility to make sure no matter what, at least you had the bare minimum. And so
Yeah.
at some point when he had that conversation with me again and he showed me and he explained to me that he had been that living example, then that's when I was like, okay, I know exactly what to follow. Like not those exact same steps in those jobs or careers, but knowing that I got to do everything I can to make sure that my family can completely depend on me so they don't have to worry about a thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And often, right, obviously when we're young, we don't see those things, right? We just, like you said, we just know it as it is because our parents, one, are not good about communicating those things. Specifically in the Latino community, I remember seeing I think it was like a video. I'm not sure if it was YouTube or somewhere on social media where there was a mom was recording her husband and their two children, a little girl and a little boy, maybe like ages of like 7 or 8, and they all stood in one line and you have the Mexican father, and then you have the two children that were born in the United States. You've probably seen it. And she'll ask, like, take a step forward if you have had pizza, in your life. And then, like, the two kids move forward under the age of 10. The father stays behind. And she says, like, let's take a step forward if you've had, two pairs of shoes. Like, the kids step up and the father doesn't. Like, and then take a step forward if you had a mother and a father who were there for you. You know, question after question, the kids keep moving forward, and the father stays back. And that reminds me a lot of our upbringing. With you, with me. This is true. It is true. We're not taught those things. We don't have those things, but they made it happen. So for us, lucky for me, I was raised in this country, even though I was born in Mexico. But we have similarities with our family values because our parents did that, right? Continue to do that 3 generationals. But unless we somehow ourselves learn those lessons and continue to teach that to our next generation, it's gonna die with us, right? Because part of our conversations today is gonna be how do we become more financially stable as we get older, not only as humans, but also specific in the Latino community, because I know from our conversations, is something that lacks in our space with our culture. How has any of these conversations when it comes to financial literacy, specifically in the Latino community, has it been easy or uncomfortable for you to talk about when it comes to these topics to other people?
It's never been uncomfortable just because I've always been a numbers person. And so was my dad. And apparently so was my grandpa. I mean, he passed away by the time I was
Yeah.
5. My dad always told me that.
Yeah.
So, when I saw these concepts and everything just made sense, and I went, gosh, like I wish I knew this. I wish my parents knew this. I wish my aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, family members, like everybody knew this. So then for me, I was just like, since it opened my eyes, I just wanted to open up everyone else's eyes. I'm like, hey, did y'all ever know this? If 99% of the time, no one did. Like there was a very, very small, I want to say out of the 9 years I've done this, 7 people that actually were on track financially. And it's just sad to see because people work so hard. And so when I try to have this conversation, or obviously in the beginning, way early on when I first started, I had no idea how to even start it, how to make calls, how to set appointments with people, like just have them hear me out. And I got more experience as I went along. But what I saw, at least the difficulty or the barrier that I had to constantly get over, and still to this day, is just the lack of financial literacy in our Hispanic culture for the most part.
Hmm.
And where most people are used to you just make money and you work and you survive and that's it. Some people take it a step above and become business owners, or if they focus on investments, they always focus on casas o terrenos because that's what we're used to, right? Multiple homes or multiple lots of land, like you're a big shot. And so when I try to
Hmm.
introduce them to something that generates even more income or grows way beyond that kind of investment, it's been hard for them to conceptualize it because it's not something you see physically. It's just numbers on a screen. And so it's always been that experience has really helped me show them how real it is and how our day to day works. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just I can't get through them. That's with like any population as well. Sometimes they just don't see the value of it. And I've just learned that if they don't see the value, there's no reason for me to keep on pressing forward. I'll give it 2, 3 shots. But if after that they still really don't care, then that's fine. Like I'm not here to try and convince you. I'm just trying to show you what's out there. And if you want to take advantage of it, how I can help.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know you talked about your grandfather and your father both being good with numbers. Is that something that they learned from their parents, or something they just kind of came up with because of the business structure that they were trying to build?
That's a really good question. So my grandpa, I have no idea. Because I know my dad would just tell me stories of when he would like look at a cow and just know más o menos cuánto medía, cuánto pesaba, and then they would like test him, and then they would measure him, and they're like, "Holy cow! Like he was only off by like 5 pounds or whatever," or he could just do mental math just like that. And so my dad was. And I want to say that because my dad worked with him, he worked the same way. Because I mean, they used to do like farm work in Mexico, but at a certain point, my grandpa also had a couple taquerias. So like they were always like business minded and entrepreneur and like moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I just kind of inherited the leniency towards math just because like reading and literature has never been my strong suit. I've always been a slow reader. My wife laughs at me all the time for it. Like we're reading something on a screen and she like moves on. I'm like, wait, I'm only halfway. So, but yeah, like numbers have just always made sense because they either are something or they're not something. There's no interpretation.
Yeah, I know. I've never been good at numbers. And it's funny because, as you know, I've been a business owner for many, many years. And it's always interesting to think about that. Although I didn't like numbers and I wasn't good at it, I guess I did enough to get by, right?
Yeah.
Especially, when it comes to reading a P&L. But yeah, I've never been the best at it either. And I was never taught those things either. Aside from the schooling stuff, my parents didn't have much of that either. Very similar to your story. My parents came to this country and didn't have more than elementary school education. So for me, it was like getting older. It's like, how do I become more literate, when it comes to financial stuff? And not only that, but be able to teach my kids, how to be better about it. You mentioned your grandfather passed away when you were 5. So does that give you any sense of like, did you feel like you lost anything because you didn't have that much time with him? And then the second question with that is, did your family continue to tell you stories about him that kind of make you think about, oh, this is my grandfather. I knew him really well because of the stories that I heard.
I don't really know much about my grandfather. I mean, there were stories my dad would tell me, but if someone say like describe your grandfather, it wouldn't be to the point of where as if I knew him or like met him in
Yeah.
person. Like there are pictures of when I was with him and where he would ride a horse and I would be right in front of him and my grandpa would just like bite jalapenos like they were candy and I tried to do the same when I was a baby. And so, both him and my dad thought I was going to be a huge spicy eater, but I'm like the wimpiest Mexican when it comes to spice, unfortunately. And I mean, I knew kind of más o menos his story of how he stole my grandma back then, and how he was just a hard worker and how he would discipline his children. And my dad would tell me, what it would be like in comparison to what they did with me. But that's kind of about it. I didn't really know much else about him. So, like, I wish I would have, but I mean, he just passed away at an age where, I mean, he was in Mexico, I was in the US, and we didn't go back and forth very often. So it was kind of hard for me to really build that relationship or be old enough to even remember if we had one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it's funny, interesting. You said that you heard the stories about how he stole your grandmother, because I think we all have the same story when it comes to every Hispanic Latinx uh, families. Like mi abuelita, mi papá, they didn't even know they just tried to ask for their hand, but at the end of the day, most mothers would say no to any man coming around their daughter. So like, all right, fine, we'll just run away. Me la voy a robar, right? It was like, and that just became a thing. My parents are the same way. Mi papá era Clio, mi mamá Unice. They knew each other in middle school, and he was older, like by a few years. No, he wasn't in school, so he would, come by the middle school during recess or whatever, and like she was attracted to him, and he tried to go to mi abuelita Rosa and preguntarle, I want to date your daughter. And she was like, no way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So eventually they became a thing to like, you know what, we're just gonna be together, like whatever. Like, and then they ran away and they had me and whatever, and then my sister as well. But I think that's a story that we can all resonate to in almost every Latin American Mexican culture, because it is a part of who we are, right? And it's like I feel like almost like now that we're in this country in the US, although we have those stories to look back on and we have reflections, right? It's a new generation of stories that we're building, right, within our own people, when it comes to living in this country. How has experience been for you growing up in the States, after born in the US to Mexican American parents? So now, like, how does that resonate with you when it comes to like how you perceive your life as a Mexican first, and then obviously obviously as a US citizen as well, and how does that shape your identity now? And tell me more about that.
So it's very interesting. I had so many, like, I feel like they were unique experiences. And I never really talked to people about those experiences to see if anybody else could relate with me. But like, for example, I was in musicals in middle school and high school, and my freshman year of high school, the musical we were doing was Wizard of Oz, and I'd never watched it. I've heard of the title. I didn't really know the characters, nada. And people just stared at me and they're like, "Have you been living under a rock? How do you not know this?" I was like, "I've never seen this." And I was like, "Do you know who Cantinflas is, or La India Maria, or Pedro Infante, Jorge Negrete?" And they're just like, "What?" They're like, "You live in the US." I'm like, "Yeah, but my little home is Mexico. Like my
Yeah,
house, I live with Mexican parents and I watch what they
yeah,
watch." Like,
yeah.
yes, like I may have grown up like watching cartoons, whether it be like Pokemon or Sonic X or Fairly Odd Parents. So then, that's where I can relate to like the 90s generation.
Yeah.
But like there's just certain unique experiences that you have that nobody else really gets. Like, especially when I watched
Hmm.
cartoons of like, oh, my grandma made me cookies. I was like, my grandma makes tamales. I've never seen her make a cookie in my life. That's always been interesting. And then as I've grown older, just kind of realizing like I am a part of two worlds, and
Hmm.
and I don't get to have the same experience you have, for example, where people who look more traditionally Mexican, they can kind of tell from a mile away. With me, people have never been able to guess it. Like, people always just either pass me as white or something else. And so, when I throw out I'm Mexican, they're like, "Oh, I never saw that coming," or "You don't have an accent," or "You don't look it," or whatever. And then there's all the memes and jokes about that. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, let me bust out my sombrero and mustache."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to be part of both worlds. And it sounds cliche, but like I feel like the most thing I can relate to is from Selena's movie of when her dad said you got to be more Mexican than Mexicans and more American than the Americans. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
you always have to kind of either prove yourself or like change or blend into both sides. And you're never 100%, I feel, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm not always 100% completely accepted by either side. Not saying like I'm an outcast or people like treat me differently, but for example, like I show up to like quinceañeras or weddings with Hispanos and I show up in a suit. Everybody else is in su tejana, jeans, boots, and that's never been my style. Like that's just not my
Yeah.
thing. And so, I show up all dressed up and everyone's like, ah, caray, pues tú qué estás haciendo acá? And like everyone, kind of semi looks at me funny, but,
Yeah.
they know I'm cool because I'll blend in, I'll dance, I'll eat, and I'll get along with people. With the American side, same deal where, we'll go to weddings and then people will start dancing. And I'm like, where's the cumbia? Where's the salsa? Where's the bachata? Like, why are we all just jumping around like we're back in like middle school dances? And so it's just always been this weird tug and pull. Like, obviously, there's great things from both sides, but it's just, I feel like it's just weird living in this blended world.
It is, but it's a blessing and a curse, right? Maybe more of a blessing than a curse. I guess I don't want to say a curse because it's nothing really negative about it. Much like you, like I said, I think what has really shifted my perspective in my life in these countries that the fact that I was raised here and I was raised almost like an American. Like you said, based on the movie, my parents, well, my mom was, she was like, hey, you gotta assimilate, you gotta be part of this culture because you are here. You ain't going nowhere. You're not going back. This is your life now. So you assimilate. So inside of those four walls, like you, I was Mexican. Outside of those four walls, I was American. I don't look American, but I was American to the world. And even nowadays, I'm 40 now, and like my community is, I would say 90%, Anglo Americans. And when they look at me, they don't look at me. I'm blessed and lucky enough that they don't see the skin, they don't see the accent, they don't see the fact that I am an immigrant from Mexico. They see Ernesto, a guy with is in the community, who's involved, who's articulate, who coaches, who loves. They just see a human. And I've been really blessed I'm in a community of people that accept me as who I am. Because for the longest time as an adult, I was trying to fit in still to these communities, and I would often like be in a room of like, let's say 30 white people, right? Who were all close people that I know in my community, and we would be hanging out watching the football game, American football. And I would like be picking on like on brown people and myself, like just to make fun of us. And they would all feel offended. I'm like, why are you offended? Like, it's
Right.
my people. Like, I'm like, there's something wrong with you if it's offending you, okay? And then
Yeah.
eventually, my friend Mary and her husband Steve, like, Ernesto, we love you for who you are, right? I'm like, I know. They're like, then you gotta stop like making fun of brown people. I'm like, again, I don't know why it offends you.
Right.
Like if it's offending you, there's something's wrong with you, not with me, okay? But obviously we're friends, and it's just a joke because everywhere I go, especially living here in the South, in Fort Mill, in the Fort Mill area, is that I'm like one of like not even a handful. I would say maybe three of us that are brown. Anywhere I go, there's no brown people. So it's a running joke when I go to the local bar or the local restaurants. This is the only token Mexican in the area. But like, it's it's funny to the point where like my friends now give me shirts that says like my only token Mexican friend, and
Mhm.
I wear them to the parties, and like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
running joke. But to me, it's fun because it's like they've accepted me not because I'm brown, but because I bring that energy to who they are, and it just happens that I'm Mexican, right? And I happen to be a different color, but I can assimilate to every single thing that they do, whether it's sports, whether it's relationships, whether it's business, whatever it is, because at the end of the day, I'm still human, right? Just much like you, much like everybody else. I think we give people stereotypes because that's just what it is. And I wish it wasn't the case, but no, that's part of things in life. So when it comes to life and other things you're describing, what's something that's giving you, obviously, you're a new father, been married for a few years now, and you have a business. What's something that's been giving you your life a lot of energy and purpose lately?
Really, more than anything is my son
Yeah.
and wife. Because I mean, yeah, like I since the beginning, at least, I mean, being the oldest first, my parents, my dad, more than anything, always taught me to be the example, said if anything happens to me, you gotta take care of the family. And so I was always very forward thinking. Like I always thought about like, "Hey, what's the next step? What's the next step? What do I have to do? I want to make sure that I do things the best to my ability. Obviously, nothing's going to turn out perfect, but as long as I'm headed in that direction, I'll be okay." And then, I was motivated to go to college, motivated afterwards to get my licenses and help people and build his business and do it alongside with my wife. And now that we have our son, it's just like this whole extra level. And it's interesting because so early on, I feel like I didn't respect my time as much after college. Like I knew I had to organize everything and make things happen, and I still have always done that. But there were things where I would go like, oh, if I waste time doing this or doing that or waiting here, it's not a humongous deal. But now, especially that I have my son and, I do everything I can to work from home, be at home, help my wife with them. Like, I want to be just as part of it. I don't want to be that dad of like, oh, he just happens to help out. Like, no, this is a normal thing. We're in this together. We are a team. It is normal for me to watch my son and take care of him and change him and feed him and all the stuff because I don't want to ever feel like, oh, thank you for helping me. It's like, no, we are a team. This is what we do.
Mhm.
But now because I have to always be conscious of that, it's now my mindset has been different when I set meetings with people and make sure they confirm because if they don't confirm, I'm not even going to waste my time to try and like, I'll just wait them now. And like, yeah, I'm all for giving people grace and know that life happens in traffic and situations. But now I'm just like, hey, like if you're not going to respond or you're not going to confirm, then like I'm just going to cancel this and we'll just have to schedule another time if this is something you actually want to do because I'm not going to stay here waiting for you if I could spend that time with my wife and son. So like
Yeah.
I feel this is the biggest shift more than anything of that and just also being aware of that time I have outside of spending time with them to make sure I really make the most of it. Where before I would, but then I would get distracted here and there, social media, technology, whatever. But now I'm just like, all right, if I'm not with them, I got to get to work. And when I'm not working, I want to make sure I
Mhm.
spend that time with them.
Yeah, no, it's very important, right? Because now, like you said, now that you have a son, it's priorities have to be different, right? Because although you have a business and a life to run, you do want to make those memories and have that time with your son and your wife to ensure that the things that you want to happen can happen, right? And as much as you want to do what you want to do for other people, it can become cumbersome, right? To think about someone else's mindset and how they don't want to make the time, even though they're sort of not giving you the time, but didn't confirm, like you said. So I think a lot of people are probably in similar places, in life, new husbands, new kids, new family, business, whatever. What do you think has been the best advice you've gotten when it comes to financial literacy prior to you becoming who you are today and what you do for a living? And what kind of advice do you have for people to follow into those footsteps?
So the best piece of advice prior to my line of work and then
Hmm.
best piece of advice I can give now in my line of work.
Yeah.
Okay. So best piece of advice prior. I mean, I was very thankful for what my dad taught me about credit cards because I was terrified to even just have a debit card, period. Just because I just saw way too many ads on the radio, on TV about debt consolidation and people's credit cards going crazy. And so I would always just carry cash. And when my dad's like, you can't be doing that. You need to use a debit card. I'm like, no, I don't want to get in trouble. And he's like, it's the same as cash. And then I trusted him. And then once I turned 18, he's like, time to get a credit card. I'm like, no, I know those are bad. And he's like, they're only bad if you don't know how to use them incorrectly. So, I mean, the best advice he gave me with that and teaching me was get this card, just use it for gas because you'll never overspend on gas. It's like you'll always end up having money to pay for it. It's like the way that people get inundated with debt is that, people get these credit limits and next thing you know is they want to start buying a laptop and this and that and the other. And then the next month rolls around and they have the bill and they're like, oh, I can't afford all of that. And so that's the biggest piece of advice I got before my line of work is just when you use credit cards, always be aware that next month you have to pay the statement balance and only pay the statement balance. A lot of times
Yeah.
people pay the balance in full, but then when you pay the balance in full every time and you always end up with zero at the beginning and zero in the end, it looks like you never did anything, so your credit doesn't build. But if you can have a statement balance first and foremost, because it's always delayed like a month, then the next month pay the statement and then pay the statement and then pay the statement. And then that's when you start building that relationship little by little. And don't just get haphazard cards. Like buy a card, get a card with a purpose, whether it be points or miles or whatever perks you want, and let
Hmm.
that be your like forever card. That way you can build that history. So I was prior to my line of work. Excuse me. Now in my line of work, the best piece of advice I can give somebody is a two-part strategy of buy term and invest the difference. As those were two of the biggest things I knew nothing about when I first started. One, I had no idea what life insurance was or how it even worked. And now that I understand how it works, no life insurance makes sense to have except for term insurance because the purpose of it is income replacement. Some people have been sold it as an investment or especially like Gerber baby life insurance policies. I remember seeing those as like late night commercials growing up. And, in the beginning it makes sense, but then you dive into it and it makes no sense at all because it pays out if you pass away So it's like, why would you get life insurance on a child for, I don't know, 100 grand plus? It's like that they're not an income earner. That doesn't make sense. And so
Hmm.
buy life insurance for the temporary time you need it because it's only during the time where you have dependents, where you have debt and you're not ready to retire. And then the second part of that is invest the difference, where you would have spent the money on a cash value policy, whole life, universal life, variable life, IUL. Term life is just pure insurance, just like every other kind of insurance out there, right? Car insurance, auto insurance, dental insurance, like no other insurance out there comes with like an added price to add on to
Hmm.
savings or investment. So like just pay for pure insurance. That way you never overpay for anything. And then the difference is invested into mutual funds. Obviously, talk to somebody like me to be able to figure out which one is the best one in your case, in your situation. But open up Roth IRAs, right? Make sure your money grows tax free for retirement. Make retirement a priority. Make prior to retirement a priority. There are accounts you can invest in that you can use prior to age 59 and a half. And if people just had their money in the right place, instead of being terrified and having it debajo del colchón or in a safe or behind the TV or in the wall, yes, a bank is a safer place because they guarantee it. Because what if your home burns down or someone breaks into your house? But your money doesn't grow in the bank either. And so if you can just invest your money in the right place, talk to somebody who is willing to give you a free education, then you can really learn where your money can grow beyond and not be afraid of investments because yeah, the market goes up and down, but it's always 7 or 8 years where the market goes up and 2 or 3 where it goes down. So you're making money 78 to 80% of the time. It's not gambling.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of having that strategy of if you live a long time and if you don't, because that's the only one or two situations we have in life. Either you live a long time or you don't. You got to be ready for both.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense f- from what you're saying. So a lot of us that may not know what life insurance or investments are, how do you typically explain in simple terms? How do you explain to people, specificamente gente latina, how do we explain to them, what life insurance and investments are when it comes to someone who has no prior knowledge?
Yeah. So, for example, with life insurance, I always ask the question of like, hey, in typical scenario, you have dad who's working, mom stays at home, has got two, three, four, five kids. And I go, all right, dad, if something happens to you to and from work, anywhere in between, how's your family going to be able to survive without you? Some of them come up with the excuse of, hey, Dios sabrá. And I'm like, okay, I love trusting in God and everything, but you got to work in partnership with, if they're giving you this opportunity to take care of your family, that's God saying, hey, you should probably take this advantage instead of just relying on him completely. So it's showing them, hey, this is here if you're not here. Something happens to you, your family can survive without you as if you're still here because now they're receiving enough money that replaces your income completely until the kids are old enough to handle themselves. And then investments, it's making sure like, hey, right now you're working and you're working hard. Most of the time it's manual labor. Like your body's not going to be able to do the same work you do now at age 50, 60, 70. And you don't want to at that point. You've worked so hard for so long, your money should be working for you just as hard, if not harder. That way, one day you can actually enjoy your life. And so, like with the investment concepts, especially with what people are afraid of like, well, what if what I invested in goes down or goes bankrupt? And I'm like, well, that's the danger with individual stocks.
Hmm.
Is that, for example, 30 years ago, there were companies like Sears, Kmart, Toys R Us, they're gone. And so nobody assumed that was going to happen. And just like today, we don't know 30
Yeah.
years from now what the companies are, which companies are still going to be around and thriving, which is why mutual funds have been the best option for the past literal 100 years because they've been around since 1920 for your money to be diversified and professionally managed to make sure you're always in what's best all the time. That way you're on top of it. And so when I teach the strategy, because a lot of times people will say like, well, if I buy life insurance, if I don't die, do I get my money back? That's like, no, because that's not how any insurance works. If you pay for car insurance for 30 years, you don't get any of your money back if you don't happen to be in a car crash or you don't get sick with health insurance or whatever it may be. So I always tell people, let's say we live in a world where you can't just buy a pre-made house. Like if you want to buy a house, you have to actually build it from the ground up. But in the meantime, you have to live somewhere. So for a period of time in your life, you're going to be paying rent and you're going to be paying for your house to be built. But once your house is built, are you going to keep on paying rent? No, you're now going to move into your house. Life insurance and investments are the same deal. You buy life insurance for temporary protection because you don't currently have half a million, $1 million to take care of your family if you're gone. And you're going to build that over time because one day, once you have the money, now you're self-insured. You no longer have to depend on insurance to take care of your family because now you have the money to take care of your family.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll explain that strategy and how that works.
Yeah, then that breaks it down pretty simply to people. I appreciate your response. obviously, I think for us as Latinos, our families were not part of that process. Unfortunately, they didn't know much about that. I know my parents didn't know that. I'm sure your parents probably didn't know much. Aside from just being knowledgeable on money, maybe we didn't know about credit cards. We didn't know about investments. We didn't know about mutual funds or insurances for that matter, right? Like, if you something broke, you get Bapuru and you rubbed it
Yeah.
on, whatever. I don't know. That's the thing, right? Like my wife and I, she hates the smell of it. I was like,
Oh
why do
my
you hate
god.
it so much? She was like, because growing up, her parents, they would rub it on everything. She was like, I
Oh
can't stand the smell of it. I was like, well, that's probably true. And it's funny, but it's not funny.
yeah.
So what do you think, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see in the families, specifically in Latino communities, make when it comes to finances, protection, and investment?
Well, the biggest thing I've seen lately, and really for the past 9 years, is people thinking they're investing their money when they're really just buying a life insurance policy. Like, I hate to like beat a dead horse, but like I see it way too often. Like, I knew a family broke my heart. Like, and they're not the only ones. Like, I've seen it over and over again. But the one that like hit me the biggest was this fact that this family was paying for 20 life insurance policies. The dad worked his butt off in a construction company, and he was told in 15 years, you'll be millionaires. And so they paid $4,000 a month into these policies, believing that they were going to be rich in the end. And if I hadn't sat down with them and showed them how their policies actually worked and called the companies to verify everything, because when they're on a recorded line, they can't lie, they realized even though they had pumped 200 grand into these policies, their investment or savings was only $40,000. They lost out on 160 grand. And unfortunately, that is a common situation. I can't tell you the amount of Latinos that I'll sit down with and they go, oh, yeah, yeah, I have an investment. And I'm like, cool, let me look at it. I'm like, great. And then we bust it out and I'm like, this is not an investment. This is a life insurance policy. And a lot of the times it's an IUL, which is an index universal life policy, which especially on social media lately has been blowing up like crazy. Everyone's talking about it as you can be your own bank. It's the secret the wealthy use to make money. And none of that's true. You look up IUL lawsuits, there are pages and pages and pages and pages of all these lawsuits against these companies who sold life insurance policies as investments. And the biggest one recently was a NASCAR driver who lost millions because he was told to put his retirement there. And so
Mm,
whether it be millions or people just putting a couple hundred or $1,000 into those policies, like they're all told the same story of it's an investment and that it's tax free. Of course it's tax free. There's no growth. In the US, you only get taxed when your money grows. So when you
mhm.
use that money and you can borrow against it, you're being charged interest, not taxes. And when does it ever make sense to borrow your own money? Like, I get in case, but at least the interest, you're paying it back to yourself. These policies, you pay it to the company. People never read the fine print. They're 120 pages long. Nobody wants to read that. But I take the time to do that to explain it to them. So if anyone ever tries to sell you a cash value policy, whole life, universal life, IUL, whatever it is, any kind of life insurance that comes with a savings or investment, run away as fast as possible. Because the only policies, the only people those are good for are the agents who sell them in the companies because they're the only ones who make money. Clients never make money off of those policies.
Yeah, that's a lot of good, helpful information. I resonate with that, obviously, and I know a lot of listeners probably will as well. When did what would you say, like, when did you, aside from realizing, once, you got past the wanting to be on Broadway, not really, but, yeah, like you were doing plays and stuff, and then obviously the math thing didn't work for you in school, teaching wise. When did you really, like, think about this is what I want to do, like, for my life? Because you're doing a phenomenal job, obviously, 9 years plus not doing it, and you're very knowledgeable. When did you really realize this is what I want to do to not only help my situation, but also being able to help others?
Well, I knew I wanted to do it at least part time for the long term when I helped out one family that I knew from church who had one of those kinds of policies. Because that was the first time I saw it in real life. Because the first couple clients I had no life insurance at all. So they were just starting from scratch. But I was constantly told these policies exist and you will see it one day. And then the one day I finally got to see it, how much they were overpaying, how little money they had inside the policy, how much better of a solution we could offer them and save so much money and make that money grow. That's when it became real to me of like, wow, this is actually happening to people I know. Because it's funny that you mentioned the whole Broadway thing, because when I first started, they always told us like, what's your motivation? Why do you want to work here? Why do you want to build this business? And literally the page of like pictures that I had was split down the middle of part of it is I want to do this for my family, which at that time was just mom, dad, brother, and sister, because I'm the oldest. My parents came to this country and I want to work my butt off. I want to take advantage of everything there is here to provide for them and make sure they have nothing to worry about. And then the second half of the page literally did say, like, I want to build this business so I can create passive income so I can go to audition on Broadway without having to worry about being a barista or a server or work somewhere else while in the middle of auditions. So that was literally my first reason to do this. Obviously, that definitely shifted over time. But yeah, like that moment when I helped out that first family, helped them save all that money from that first policy. That's when I was like, okay, this is real. I'm definitely going to stick around and do this. But it still hadn't replaced the I'm not going to be a math teacher anymore. It wasn't until the summer
Hmm.
before my fifth year, which is when I met my now wife, which she didn't necessarily have anything to do with it, but it was just I had enough experience at that point where I saw the kind of money I could make, the impact I was making in people's lives, that I said, I don't think it makes sense to be a math teacher anymore. I love teaching math, algebra, calculus, Pythagorean theorem. That doesn't help anybody the same way that teaching them how to invest their money in the right place works. And so when I saw just, I am teaching math and money is just in a different area and I'm making a bigger impact. Because originally I was like, I want to be the Latino teacher who teaches math because I never had a Latino teacher growing up. And so like, if I could be that face to these students that are either born here or came from a different country and they go, you get me, you kind of look like me, you understand me and my culture and my
Hmm.
family and the situation. I was like, I would love to be able to build that relationship with them and inspire the next generation. But
Yeah,
seeing this, I'm like, I could make a bigger impact with adult families who are in the middle of it, who should see the value of it. And then that'll trickle down to the next generation to whether I start them off on the right foot as soon as they turn 18, or their parents build something enough where now they can pass on that generational wealth to the next family. So now they're even better off. And so that summer before my fifth year is when I was like, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish off this last year, which I ended up not doing. But that was my intention was I'm not going to be a math teacher anymore. I'm just going to finish it just to finish it, to have the degree. But I had already had my mind set on this is what I'm going to.
that's awesome. I can obviously tell you're passionate about it, obviously knowing you and hearing you talk about it. So for those that are listening, what piece of advice would you give to someone trying to build a better financial future for their family?
I mean, it goes back to that strategy. Like I said, I mean, if you're younger and you don't have, a mortgage, you're not married, you don't have kids, no one depends on you, invest as soon as possible. A lot of people, it's funny because the company I work with was funded by teachers and with the intention to educate families and create as many financially independent families as possible. So we've always given our education for free, set our appointments for free. We don't charge people because the companies we work with pay us when we help that family. And so many people I've talked to have told me, when I've said like, oh, I'm a financial advisor or a financial coach, they go like, oh, I don't have the kind of money to do that. I'm like, what do you mean? How much money do you think you need? And everybody believes you need thousands of dollars, or you need to pay someone thousands of dollars for you to even have an appointment with you or sit down with them or be able to do anything with your money. And I mean, I've talked to people who either currently work at banks or used to work at banks, and I would ask them the same question of how much money does somebody need for the investment conversation to even begin, for that to even be a door opening to them. And I've always heard the minimum is $250,000, which is insane to me because who is able to build that without investing? And if they do, it takes them forever. And then they've lost out on all this time that they could make so much more with it. So I've helped so many people invest with $25 a month, 30, 50, 100. I mean, now anybody can do it with, Webull, Robinhood, Acorn. I'm not promoting those, but those are options. And it's better than doing nothing. It's better than just keeping your money in the bank. Obviously, best case scenario is to talk to a financial coach or advisor, someone who's licensed, which there's a website to verify that. It's called Broker Check. That's going to be a huge thing. Like if you talk to anybody who says they're an advisor or they can help you with your money and grow it, look them up on Broker Check first and foremost. Because if they don't pop up, they are not licensed. Because it's just so many people who've told me like, yeah, I have an advisor, I have a coach. And then I look them up and they don't exist. And I'm like, that's because they're not actually securities license or investment license. But yeah, I mean, start as soon as possible. You don't need a ton of money. And if you have a family, you got kids, you got people who depend on you, buy a term and invest a difference every day of the week.
That's really good advice, man. I appreciate that. So as we close down this chapter, what else do you think people should know about your line of work, about yourself?
Well, more than anything, for at least the Latino community, is getting past the mindset of no hay otra. All I've heard growing up, and it drives me nuts because there are still people to this day who will say this phrase to me, and it burns me up inside of, ¿Cómo estás? No, pues bien trabajando, no hay de otra. And it makes you want to just like strangle them or shake some sense into them and just go, I know that's what you've been told your entire life, but it's not true. Hay otra. Life is not you just work and then you die and then that's it. Like there's so much more you can take advantage of, and you need to know it and believe it. Because if people don't believe it, they won't take action on it, right? People never take action on things they don't believe in. The only reason they do stuff is because they believe in it or it'll work or some sort of payout in the end of it. So it's just getting people to realize like, yes, there's no avoiding working, but you can one day not have to work. You just need to know where to put your
Hmm.
money to make sure it works for you. And if you yourself won't believe it, or your parents won't believe it, or the people around you won't believe it, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means you're around people who don't believe in it, who have no experience in it. And like, never take advice from someone who isn't in a place in life that you don't want to be in. And I remember talking to my dad about this because it's true. Like, if you take advice from someone and you keep on listening to their advice, chances are you're going to end up just like them.
Hmm.
Some people, try to teach you from their mistakes, but where they are is their experience and what led them there. And so that's really as far as they can take you. So if you don't want to end up like these people, you need to talk to other people. You need to surround yourself from other people, take advice from other people who are in a place in life where you want to be like. Because I always said, when it came to owning a restaurant or running a restaurant, I trusted my dad every single word he says because he has experience. He lived that life. It's like, but if he ever tried to give me advice on being a brain surgeon, I could not take him seriously
Yeah.
because I know he has no experience, no expertise, nothing to show for it that is something he knows about. So unfortunately, there's so many people that will act like they're experts or talk like they're experts and say they know about money, they know about investing, they know about stocks, or people on social media. And it's just like, just because they sound convicted or they sound like they know what they're talking about doesn't
Hmm.
mean they actually do. Do they live that life? Do they do that actively? Do they have their license? Like, you should only be listening to credible people. And the internet is a powerful thing where it gives people like us to be able to get on and speak. But that's a double-edged sword. I mean, the right people can get out there and the right information can disseminate and reach people. But then the same deal with people who have no experience or have no expertise and are just spreading false information. And people are believing them simply because of their character or they're an influencer or they're just recognized or whatever it may be. But just because it's
Hmm.
popular and people know you or they sound like they know what they're talking about doesn't always mean that they do. You need to research and back it up. Can they really prove it and do things make sense and like cross reference things? Like there's so much more deeper that you have to go to make sure you're making the right steps and you're listening to the right people as opposed to, well, it was on the internet or it was, no, it must be true. We all know
Yeah.
it's not. Anyone could put anything. So just make sure you double check your data, cross reference things, and know that it can happen for you no matter where you're at. Your past does not have to determine your future, and your surroundings doesn't mean you have to end up like everybody else. You can do whatever you want to do. You just need to head in that direction, whatever it may be. And sometimes it's different from where everybody else is.
No, that's true, man. I appreciate your honesty and your feedback, and I appreciate your encouragement towards not only people who are listening, but myself in general. Yeah, that was really good advice. I think for those who are listening, I think they can take the simple steps, like you said, to really become more knowledgeable on simple things. Post your information on the link once we share this episode, so people can look you up, and they will find you on our website because you are licensed and insured.
Yes. Yes.
So I can vouch for that. Any other things you want to say before we end this episode?
I just really appreciate the time and I appreciate you trusting me and thinking about me and opening up your platform for me to be able to speak on here. All I want to do is be able to reach as many people as possible, educate as many people as possible, and whether they decide to do anything or not with that education is totally up to them. I just want to make sure people at least know because when you know better, typically you can do better. So it's just a matter of making sure the right information's out there that you get in front of the people who are willing to help you because I'm sick and tired of seeing so many people work so hard for so long and have no other option but to continue working or depend on somebody when life could have been so much differently had they just known.
That's true, man. I appreciate that. What I always tell my listeners at the end is, obviously we dive into deeper connections when it comes to different stories. It's a whole roller coaster of emotions, talking about you and your life and your family. And I was talking about important things in life when it comes to life insurance and such. But at the end of the day, people's stories matter, right? Your voice matters. In every aspect, we want to remind everyone that you're not alone in this journey. You have people like Omar that can help you. You have me if you need it for anything. There's other people in life that you can count on. So as Latino, we've got to reach out to those people that can help us, or if you're someone that can help somebody, be that asset as well. This has been Life, Lo Nuestro, and everything else. Until next time.